All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome, Ben. I'm so glad to have you and looking forward to the conversation today.
Glad to be here, Alan.
So, today's topic is all things AI, agentic AI, security, which is definitely top of my inbox every single day, including on the weekends. AI doesn't stop, right? So, I'm really excited to go through this conversation, get your perspective, and cover some of the points that you talked about in one of our recent publications, the Digital Trust Digest. So, with that, I would like to say welcome to Ben Schreiner officially, who is the AI and Modern Data Strategy BD leader at AWS. Welcome. The article that we are referring to here and would like to talk about is Identity is the Control Plane for Agentic AI in the Cloud. So, as mentioned, we're going to be focusing the questions in our sort of back and forth conversation about the risks that we're seeing as AI is moving from more experimental POCs into some people deploying things into production. And those of us that have been around and those that, like yourself who have seen shifts from more on-prem to in the cloud, we've dealt with things like this before, right? And how can we take the knowledge and the experience that we gained from those shifts in time to in this next wave of market evolution, specifically around AI and agentic AI? I think one of the key points that we're seeing is that when people are deploying AI systems in their business, they're starting to act on behalf of humans and employees. And the big question is our governance models, are they keeping up? Are they ready to handle this new dynamic and this new technology? And that's something that you talked about, Ben, in your article that I mentioned earlier. So your work is sitting right at the intersection of cloud architecture, right, identity, and then this sort of emerging AI operating models. So really glad to have your voice in this conversation.
No, appreciate it, Alan. It's great to be here.
So with that intro, just like to go into a first question. Your article opens up with a very simple but powerful example and something that totally resonated with me because I do it all the time. I ask some sort of, pilot bot or a bot for a recipe for something, whether it's making a soup or a new cake, because I hate just going to Google and then finding out these different ads that pop up and then there's somebody's life story, and while that's kind of nice, I just want the real answer. And so you referenced someone asking their corporate AI bot for a chocolate chip cookie recipe. So that question, can you tell us a little bit more about how that reveals how organizations are deploying AI today in a simple way?
Sure. Well, unless you're in the business of making chocolate chip cookies, your corporate AI should not give you an answer. And I use that simple test, and I share it publicly when I publicly speak, just as a way to see if your corporation has put the guardrails in place for AI. I'm a big believer that we, the humans, are responsible for responsibly deploying AI. And the first thing we need to do is tell AI what it can and can't do. And that's the guardrails that I'm referencing. And again, if you do get an answer back, that's a very innocent question, but you can imagine other more nefarious questions that could be asked. And if the corporate AI is giving those answers, it could open up the company to risk, the board of directors to risk, and potentially, again, waste time and waste money because it's not solving corporate business. It's being used for some other purpose. And none of us have enough time. We certainly don't have enough money to go around to do all the things we want to do. So we don't want to be wasteful, but that's a real simple test to see if some guardrails have been put in place or if perhaps that's an area of governance that needs to be addressed. I also think many, in my experience, rushed in all the excitement to put AI out in some way, shape, or form. And in that rush to, participate in this revolution, I think many skip past some blocking and tackling from a security perspective that we've done for decades, but some of us have forgotten in a hurry to take advantage of this new capability. And so I encourage any listener or viewer to please, put some of these things we know how to do, these proven best practices, into practice in your own organization. If you're in a hurry, that's great. We're glad you're participating, but let's make sure we do it in a safe and secure way.
That's a great point. And I definitely echo what you're saying about how many people are trying this out. They are testing it out. If you are a CISO or you're a leader of an organization and you don't know about it, it is happening. It's one of these things that I think it's so accessible, and because people can use it and have used it in their personal lives, that then they try to bring it into work. Because why not, if you've learned a tool or you've learned a different way of working, why wouldn't you want to try to do it here when it can help you be more efficient at your job or communicate with others more effectively? So I think people are trying to deploy these technologies to use them in the right way, but we have to make sure that from a security perspective, we're not giving it access to things it shouldn't have access to. We're not, and to your point, we have the right sort of guardrails, governance, auditability, and all of that around it to track what's happening.
Well, so you mentioned something that's important for everybody to realize. This is one of the first technologies to really start with the consumer. And we're using it on our phones, and we've brought it into the corporation, versus most technology in corporate America or in an enterprise starts in the enterprise before it kind of gets reduced in cost to be more consumerized. And that's created a real security challenge for those in the profession. Is a lot of folks are using what's on their phone and putting very sensitive data, customer data, PII, things that they shouldn't be doing, because they want to be able to use the tool to do their jobs better. So it's human nature to try and use new tools to be more effective and efficient. But if those tools weren't provided by the corporation and put in the appropriate security parameters around it, you could be, and I'd argue you are, exposing yourself to some pretty big risks as an organization, because your people are absolutely using these tools. Mm-hmm. Whether you gave them to them or not, they're using them.
Exactly. Yeah, so let's shift to another topic that really talks about maybe not reinventing the wheel or learning from the past, which you were hinting at. And I have had a lot of experience at Keyfactor working with IoT and product security customers as well. And I see this sort of as a similar, people, and when I would speak to them about securing a medical device or a vehicle, would know how to use it, define and develop that product itself. But when it comes to the security piece of it, I would always say, you don't need to reinvent security. We've been doing identity and trust and signing and verification in enterprise for decades. Let's see how we can bring that into now your smart fleet of devices and what you're delivering to your customers. So when I think about agentic AI, it's also, what can we be using that we've used in the past that now is just expanded to this use case? And I would like to hear from your past about how cloud security has evolved, right? And how have you seen maybe some parallels between that early adoption of move to cloud and then what we're seeing in move to AI, and what is most relevant for leaders to understand when they're making decisions about how to deploy this?
Yeah, the goal is still the same, right? Even though the technology is evolving, I think anybody in the security profession or anybody who's responsible for risk mitigation, the goal is still the same. You want to make sure that the right people have access to the right systems in a timely manner, and that you have auditability and can track. Or important, when somebody who shouldn't have access or is trying to get access, you have a way to identify that. And when we started out on premise and you were managing a data center and you knew you had physical security that you were responsible for, you had access to the systems and the logins and so forth. And when we moved to the cloud, you no longer had to take care of physical security. So that it actually got a little easier because you had one less component to have to worry about, because we, Amazon, take responsibility for securing the cloud. But we have a shared responsibility model where you're responsible for securing what you put in the cloud. And that's where again, you just take that concept of identity and you extend it into the cloud, but you now have a centralized mechanism where you can control all kinds of different access and have policies that cascade and ways to audit and have a more complete picture of your security. And it actually made several of the components a little easier. Now you go into AI, and we'll differentiate, right? Most people's experience with AI right now is ask and answer. It's a chatbot like we discussed, where you ask for a recipe and you get an answer back. And so that is not agentic, right? It's just generative AI and using a chatbot type interface. And so you would log in like you would any other application, or have some kind of credential that says who you are. And then theoretically, ideally, your rights and responsibility, what data you have access to, gets extended into the chatbot itself. So if I ask for the compensation for all of our executive leaders, I don't have access to that. I should never have access to that. And the chatbot shouldn't be able to go get access to that, because it knows who I am and it knows what I shouldn't have access to. Okay, so that paradigm's the same as it was on premise, as it was in the cloud, and it holds true in the AI world. When you go to agentic, though, it gets a little more complicated, right? Because now you have agents, little computer programs, interacting with each other. And we've got to figure out, when it comes to identity, where is the source of the inquiry, and what is the right level of permissions to grant that agent, who is a proxy for someone somewhere, right? And that agency that's given requires, again, a level of understanding of who asked for this, and then what empowerment are we granting in order to be able to complete the task. Because again, back to my compensation example, you wouldn't want one agent asking another agent and getting a bunch of information and then providing it to someone who shouldn't have access to that information. And then if you think about agents, right now we're early days, right? But you can anticipate where there's not just going to be one agent, where many people, their concept is, I have a personal assistant, right? So I have an agent that works for me and should be able to do things on my behalf. Super straightforward and simple. Things are going to get a lot more complicated quickly, because we're going to have agents that do different functions, have different capabilities, and we're going to have agents talking to each other. And that's where things get a little more complex and require a level of identity and control and governance and monitoring to make sure that we're solving the problem, but only granting access to the appropriate level of detail and systems.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That makes a ton of sense. And I do feel that we are, the shift to the cloud, where was the old mindset of fixed, clear boundaries, to now, we have to have things be more programmable, distributable. And I think the common thread in all of that, and I do want to move into identity now, because that you teed up the next question really, really well, but we can't be having static credentials. That is a liability. So I think as long as we continue to reiterate that, no hard coding, no using, fixed API keys and tokens and things like that, we have to be leveling up our trust infrastructure and be thinking about identities in a very different way, because especially when you get to agentic and they're autonomous, they could be very short-lived, for a single purpose. And there could be many, 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 many of them. So we're talking about a volume issue as well here. So let's go a little bit to identity then.
Yeah.
Thinking about that as a way to control access to something. And if these systems, like you mentioned, are going to be more autonomous, where you have an agent that then is allowed to communicate to another agent to get things done. There are these sort of little workers within an environment. They need to trust each other. They need to collaborate together. They need to be able to validate who they are and then what they're allowed to do. So how do you see identity really playing a role in this, to making it, much more of a robust, I guess, environment or architecture for agentic AI specifically?
Yeah, I think again the evolution of security is important. I think it's going to need to be dynamic, not static, not hard coded, just like you said. As long as I've been in IT, like we've had system accounts, right? That were put in place to be able to do things. They had credentials and allowed them to access other systems and interact, either upload and export or do different tasks on behalf of, again, the organization. But when we look at security, and all of these agents now become attack vectors, right? These now are things that the bad guys who are out there are going to try to compromise. And you want to make sure in your methodology towards security that you have ways of not just authenticating what the agent should have access to, but who's accessing the agent and asking it to do something on their behalf, whether that be, again, another agent or someone from outside the organization. So this challenge, again, gets more dynamic as we start to have autonomous agents interacting with each other. And then who are they acting on behalf? Who are they proxying? So that you can make sure that the right level of access is being granted temporarily, or again, with the appropriate amount of time, given, so that they can execute what it is you've authorized them to do. At the end of the day, all of this has to be auditable, right? So who asked for what, and it has to be traceable all the way back to its origin. Otherwise, those are in highly regulated organizations, whether it be banking or healthcare or otherwise. But I think even just good business practice, you want it auditable, right? You don't want, again, some third party, using a capability of one of your agents, unbeknownst to you. So I think at the end of the day, the traceability, the auditability, and the understanding of what is going on, so the monitoring and then governance becomes paramount, especially as these things start to proliferate throughout a business process or an organization, or think even bigger, organizations interacting with each other. Think supply chain and ordering a truckload of inventory. You want to make sure that you need that inventory, right? And it wasn't done out of by some other party that wasn't intended. So again, I think checks and balances are key. I think dynamic credentials are going to be key, short-lived, and again, it gets back to zero trust, right? Like how do you reduce the exposure? How do you reduce or mitigate the attack vector? So even if it is compromised, it doesn't lead to a bigger compromise. Again, these are all things that have existed for quite some time. They just need to continue to evolve as we enter into this agentic era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So interesting points here, and something I want to call out. I didn't hear you really mentioning risks such as breaches, right? Or what we think maybe traditionally think of as, okay, we're going to get attacked, or we have to level up our infrastructure to be able to protect against hackers. What I heard you talking about is risks such as drift or overreach or unclear accountability or access when you shouldn't have it. And then when you get to that next level, like you were mentioning, the whole supply chain thing, that was even interesting to think about, communicating with other third-party companies to like partners. I mean, it seems very, very complex. So I guess, is that surprising to you that maybe more of these issues that we're seeing are not breaches? And why are these things going to be showing up first, do you think, if we know how to fix it?
I mean, again, for everybody out there, right, there will be people who try to do breaches too. I'm not trying to downplay that by any means, but I am trying to suggest that the risk is more complex, right? Yeah. There is more to it. There is a risk of these probabilistic agents drifting away from what you intended it to do, and you need a way to monitor that when that happens, and a way to take corrective action as a security. You don't want a rogue agent out there doing things that you don't want it doing. And how will you know? Again, it's not like what we're all used to, where you write a line of code and you run it and it does the same thing every time you run it, right? That's not how this new paradigm works in a probabilistic manner. It's not how they operate. And so I think having a healthy understanding of the difference allows us to take an approach to security and risk mitigation that is more holistic, right? That takes into account the differences, whether it be drift or any of the other things we've mentioned, and being able to again have the monitoring to be able to see it's happening, and then the ability to take corrective action, when necessary. Again, all in an effort to reduce risk. And you've heard of, prompt injection or LLM poisoning. There is again a level of complexity here that we're all grappling with. The good thing is lots of third parties and security firms are trying to leverage these tools to make it easier for the security professionals. So the tools are going to get more sophisticated and help us be able to do things. We released a frontier agent for security, on the AWS platform to help make it easier for those who are on AWS to get some insights and to take some corrective action. So you'll see more and more development in the agentic space, trying to again make it easier. But it's not going to reduce the complexity with which we are going to find ourselves. And I think, again, all of your listeners and those watching are just going to need to do their very best to understand as much as possible, look for ways to simplify. But again, don't abandon the best practices that we've developed over the last couple of decades. Many of them still hold true, and just get extended into this new paradigm.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and something you mentioned about prompt injection and all of that, that's a whole nother topic we probably could have a discussion around. Signing and verification, which is also something that we've done in the enterprise forever, with code signing and practices for that, around auditing and just tracking what's happening and having a ledger. And so many things many other examples we can pull up. So, but I do want to kind of wrap this up with one question. And as I was rereading your article this week, you concluded that we're entering a world where our leaders, our IT leaders, and our business leaders, quite frankly, because AI and even agentic AI might not only be used within the IT organization. So these leaders are accountable not only for their people, but these systems that their people are interacting with. So what is the biggest mindset change that you want the leaders of security, technology, and business to make right now? What do they need to be doing?
So I've been saying this, and it's not meant to be controversial. It is meant to be thought-provoking. That we are the last generation of managers to only manage people. Mm-hmm. If you sit with that for a second, right? And maybe not today, right? But in the not too distant future, you're going to have agents on your staff that do parts of what your function is responsible for. And you're going to need to make sure that those things are doing what you need them to do, and that they do it at a level that you expect it to. And you're going to need to take corrective action when, again, that doesn't happen. And so the paradigm shift is, it's going to be easier and easier for non-technical people to create agents that assist them with their job, right? And we need to make sure that that is done in a way that doesn't increase the risk factor because it's done in a non-secure, non-authenticated way, and instead actually further reinforces the best practices that the enterprise has established. So again, extending. If you think development, you would have security review code and make sure that you'd have pen tests, you'd have all kinds of validations. Well, when you push development of applications out to a business user, you then also need to make sure that you extend that security practice paradigm as well. Again, the goal for everyone should be, not to increase risk, but to mitigate or reduce risk. And the fact is that writing code is just getting easier and easier for you to use just English to describe the problem and let an agent go solve the problem for you. And that's wonderful. But at the same time, we need to know that that code that got written, and that if it gets deployed, doesn't create a backdoor for someone else, or didn't pull from a repo that had malware embedded in it. Again, as things get easier, it's very tempting for us humans to just take it easy and not keep our heightened alert when it comes to security. And I would encourage everyone, as a best practice, just to stay diligent. We should always be embedding security in everything that we do, and teaching those non-technical people who are going to be able to write agents why doing so with security in mind is really important, or with identity in mind, so that things don't get compromised down the road. So this is ever evolving every day. I think we all can appreciate. And I think we just need to be diligent and collaborative. We're going to make mistakes, but we want to learn from them and go as fast as possible for our business, but in a secure and safe way.
Awesome. That's great. And it's interesting that you made that comment too, also introing that segment there about we are the last generation of managers to, not have agents or bots. And because I was in a call this morning and someone did say, we have this capability, and in our workforce, we're going to need to evaluate, are we going to build the capability, buy the capability, borrow the capability, or bot the capability? And I was like, wow, never heard bot in there, but that's build, buy, borrow, bot. So the 4 Bs. Bot is now mainstream. We're talking about it. But I really appreciate your partnership, the AWS and Keyfactor partnership. Like you said, this is not a one single company solving the world's problems. It's all of us coming together and using these common best practices that we've kind of talked about already. If we have these new non-human identities, treat them as first-class infrastructure. Design for short-lived credentials by default. Don't have things that last forever. Automate lifecycle management when you can. Have visibility. All of the things we talked about can be just moving over into this space. So Ben, I really appreciate your comments today, as well as your contributions in writing that Digital Trust Digest magazine article. So for anyone listening, if you have not read it, check that out. There's also a couple other articles in there that are interesting around this whole topic, because that whole magazine that we did was around AI. So we'll drop a link here for those to take a look at that afterwards. As always, Ben, it was great chatting with you, and look forward to future discussions and work on this together.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was fun. And again, we're here to help. We're all in this together.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.